a teacher struck you? Dr. Harrington asked, her voice barely audible as the prestigious classroom fell into stunned silence. What happens when an elite teacher faces a black student with talents she refused to see? Jamal Wilson endured weeks of being ignored and belittled at Westfield Academy, sitting through excruciating pain because a previous teacher had injured his back for daring to correct her French. But when his phone rings in Mandarin class and he answers in flawless Chinese, everything changes. Why did Dr. Harrington demand to see this brilliant student the next day? And how is a Chinese diplomat involved? This story will shake you to your core and make you question the assumptions we make about who belongs in elite spaces. Dear viewer, if you are watching my story for the first time, I humbly request you write the location from where you are watching right now, subscribe this channel and press the bell icon now not to miss the notifications of my daily published news stories. Thank you, and let's dive into the full story. Jamal Wilson stood at the imposing iron gates of Westfield Academy, clutching his scholarship letter like a shield. The prestigious private school loomed before him, all brick, ivy, and centuries of tradition that had never included people who looked like him. You've got this, he whispered to himself, adjusting the strap of his second-hand backpack. At 17, Jamal was used to being the outsider, but this was different. Westfield wasn't just any school, it was the school where children of diplomats, CEOs, and politicians prepared for lives of guaranteed success. Mrs. Wilson had woken up at 4 a.m. to make him breakfast before her first shift. Remember who you are, she'd said, straightening his collar. Your grandfather crossed oceans with nothing but hope. Your brain is your passport now. As Jamal navigated the labyrinthine hallways, whispers followed him like shadows. The scholarship student. The diversity initiative. The outsider. He'd heard it all before. His schedule listed advanced Mandarin as his first class. Languages had always been Jamal's refuge, the way words shifted and transformed across cultures fascinated him. By 17, he'd taught himself 5 languages through library books, online resources, and sheer determination. When he found room 211, Dr. Eleanor Harrington was already writing characters on the whiteboard. Her pearl necklace caught the light as she turned. You must be lost, she said, her voice carrying the polished edge of someone accustomed to authority. This is advanced Mandarin. I'm Jamal Wilson. I'm on the roster, he replied, extending his schedule. Dr. Harrington examined it with pinched brows. There must be an administrative error. This class requires 3 years of prerequisite study. I understand. I've studied independently for nearly 4 years. A few students snickered. Dr. Harrington's lips thinned to a disapproving line. Very well. Take a seat in the back. We'll sort this out after class. Jamal felt the weight of 20 pairs of eyes as he made his way to the last empty desk. His back twinged, a painful reminder of his last school, where Miss Thompson had struck him with a ruler for disrupting her class by correcting her French pronunciation. The injury had never properly healed. Dr. Harrington began speaking in rapid Mandarin, clearly attempting to establish the class's rigor. Jamal followed easily, noticing her slight Beijing accent and occasional grammatical flourishes that suggested she'd studied abroad. When she asked the class a complex question about cultural context and linguistic shifts, Jamal raised his hand instinctively. Dr. Harrington's gaze swept past him as if he were invisible. This was going to be a long semester. The next day, Jamal arrived early to Dr. Harrington's class. His back ached from yesterday's long sit in the hard wooden chair, but he was determined to prove himself. Excuse me, Dr. Harrington, he said, approaching her desk. I was wondering if I could take the placement test to confirm my qualification for this class. She looked up, surprise briefly crossing her features before settling back into cool assessment. That won't be necessary. I've reviewed your file. You have no formal training. But Mr. Wilson, she interrupted, Westfield Academy maintains the highest standards of excellence. This isn't like your previous institution. Perhaps basic Mandarin would be more appropriate for someone of your background. The first students began filing in, including a tall boy with perfectly coiffed hair who bumped Jamal's shoulder as he passed. Sorry, the boy said insincerely. Didn't see you there. His designer backpack probably cost more than 6 months of Mrs. Wilson's rent. No problem, Jamal replied in perfect Mandarin, causing the boy to blink in confusion. That's Tyler Brooks, whispered a voice beside him. A Korean-American girl with round glasses smiled sympathetically. His father owns half of downtown. I'm Zoe. Jamal. Class, announced Dr. Harrington, today we're discussing the influence of the Tang dynasty on modern character simplification. Mr. Brooks, perhaps you'd like to begin with your analysis. Tyler launched into a rehearsed response that contained 3 pronunciation errors. Dr. Harrington nodded approvingly nonetheless. When she asked another question, Jamal raised his hand again. And again, she looked straight through him. The pattern continued for 40 excruciating minutes. By the time class ended, Jamal's back was throbbing, and he had to bite his lip to keep from wincing as he stood. You okay? Asked Zoe, noticing his discomfort. Old injury, he explained vaguely. Nothing serious. As students filed out, Dr. Harrington called, Mr. Wilson, a moment. Jamal approached her desk, hope rising that she'd finally give him a chance. I've arranged for you to transfer to basic Mandarin, she said, handing him a revised schedule. Your counselor agrees it's more appropriate. Dr. Harrington, with respect, I don't need basic instruction. I'm fluent. She sighed as if dealing with a particularly trying child. Mr. Wilson, fluency requires cultural immersion, years of study, and proper instruction. It's not something one picks up from whatever resources were available to you. Jamal felt heat rising in his cheeks. I can demonstrate my proficiency. Please, just give me a chance. I've made my decision, she said firmly. Basic Mandarin meets in room 118. You're already late for your first class. Fighting back words that would only confirm her bias, Jamal turned and left. But he didn't go to room 118. Instead, he returned to her classroom during lunch and slipped his schedule under a stack of papers on her desk, keeping the original. He would not be erased so easily. The Wilson apartment was quiet when Jamal returned home that evening. His mother wouldn't be back until after her night shift at the hospital. He placed a covered plate in the refrigerator, dinner she could warm up later, before settling at their small kitchen table with an ice pack for his back. 5 years ago, Jamal had discovered his gift for languages almost by accident. After finding a dusty Mandarin textbook at a library sale, he'd become fascinated by the intricate characters that seemed to tell stories within themselves. Soon, he was borrowing every language resource the library offered. Mr. Zhang, their elderly neighbor who had emigrated from Beijing in the 1970s, noticed Jamal practicing characters and offered to speak with him. Language is freedom, Mr. Zhang had told him. Each new tongue gives you new eyes to see the world. Those conversations became the highlight of Jamal's weeks. When Mr. Zhang's eyesight began failing, Jamal would read him letters from his family in China, eventually translating responses. Their friendship transcended age and culture, connecting through the bridge of language. Before Mr. Zhang moved to a retirement home last year, he had introduced Jamal to several of his connections, including Mr. Chen, a cultural attaché at the Chinese consulate who was impressed by the teenager's pronunciation and depth of cultural understanding. Jamal sighed, remembering how different his previous school had been. There, Ms. Thompson had caught him reading a French novel during her English class. When he explained he was comparing translation nuances, she accused him of showing off and lying about his comprehension. The confrontation escalated when he respectfully pointed out an error in her French pronunciation during a class example. That was when she'd struck him with the ruler, a blow that landed with surprising force across his lower back. The official report called it an accidental contact, but the injury had required medical attention his mother could barely afford. The incident records were buried, the school board protective of their veteran teacher. It was one of many reasons why the Westfield Scholarship had seemed like such a lifeline. The next morning in English class, Jamal met Ms. Rivera, a sharp-eyed woman whose classroom walls were covered with literature from around the world. I want to hear your voices, she told the class. Literature isn't just about dead white men's perspectives. It's about understanding the human experience across cultures. For the first time since arriving at Westfield, Jamal felt himself relax slightly. When Ms. Rivera asked the class to analyze a poem with Spanish imagery, Jamal noted how the English translation lost the rhythm of the original Spanish verbs. "You speak Spanish too?" she asked, eyebrows raised. "Sí, lo estudié por mi cuenta," he replied. "Yes, I studied it on my own." Ms. Rivera smiled appreciatively. "Impressive. What other languages do you know?" "French, Spanish, Mandarin, some Korean, and I recently started Arabic," he answered, suddenly aware of the stares from his classmates. "Remarkable," said Ms. Rivera. "We should talk after class about the Multilingual Literature Club." Later, as they discussed his language background, Ms. Rivera frowned when he mentioned Dr. Harrington's class. "Eleanor can be traditional in her approach," she said carefully. "Don't let her discourage you. Some people feel threatened by exceptional students who don't fit their preconceptions." "I'm not dropping her class," Jamal said firmly. "I belong there." Ms. Rivera studied him thoughtfully. "Just be prepared. Eleanor Harrington has taught children of ambassadors and executives for 20 years. She's not accustomed to being challenged." "I'm not trying to challenge her," Jamal insisted. "I just want to learn." "Sometimes," Ms. Rivera replied, "excellence from unexpected places feels like a challenge to those who guard the gates." Walking to his next class, Jamal passed Dr. Harrington in the hallway. She glanced at him with narrowed eyes, clearly realizing he hadn't transferred to basic Mandarin as instructed. The battle lines were drawn. For the next 2 weeks, Jamal became a ghost in Dr. Harrington's classroom. He arrived early, sat in the back corner, and raised his hand only to be systematically ignored. When she distributed handouts, his desk was mysteriously skipped. When she assigned presentation partners, he worked alone. "This is beyond unprofessional," Zoe whispered one day after Dr. Harrington had accidentally forgotten to grade Jamal's perfectly executed essay on regional dialects. "You should report her." Jamal shook his head. "And confirm I'm the troublemaker she already thinks I am?" "No thanks." The truth was more complicated. Jamal knew exactly how these situations played out. His word against a decorated educator with 20 years of prestigious connections. He'd seen that movie before, and it ended with him being labeled as having an attitude problem. His back pain worsened with each 90-minute class period spent in the hard wooden chairs. Westfield Academy's antique furniture might have been historically significant, but it was ergonomically disastrous, especially for someone with an existing injury. Sometimes, he'd shift positions to relieve the pressure, only to receive a pointed glare from Dr. Harrington for disrupting class. One afternoon, when Jamal discreetly stood to stretch during independent work, Dr. Harrington barked, "Mr. Wilson. This isn't a gymnasium. Take your seat immediately." "Sorry, Dr. Harrington. I have a back injury and, if you need special accommodations, they should have been documented with the appropriate medical paperwork," she interrupted. "Until then, follow the same rules as everyone else." The medical paperwork. Of course. The specialist his mother couldn't afford after spending their savings on the initial emergency room visit. Tyler snickered from his premium front row seat. Maybe he's just restless. Different culture, different learning styles. Several students laughed, and Dr. Harrington's lips twitched in what might have been amusement. After class, Zoe caught up with him in the hallway. "That was seriously messed up. Why don't you just speak Chinese in front of her? Show her what you can do." Jamal adjusted his backpack strap to avoid pressure on his tender back. "If I force it, she'll just find another reason to dismiss me. I need to beat her at her own game." "Well, you've got one fan at least," Zoe said. "Ms. Rivera keeps talking about your Spanish essay to anyone who'll listen. She thinks you're some kind of linguistic prodigy." That afternoon, Jamal found a small gift on his desk in Ms. Rivera's class, a book of multilingual poetry with a note that read, "Voices like yours change the world. Keep speaking." For the first time in weeks, he smiled. The midterm exam for Dr. Harrington's class was legendary for its difficulty. Former students spoke of it in hushed tones, warning that even native speakers struggled with its obscure cultural references and technical vocabulary. Jamal spent extra hours studying, often staying up after helping his mother with her online nursing assistant courses. His back ached constantly now, but he refused to show weakness in Dr. Harrington's classroom. The exam was even harder than rumored, for essay questions that required detailed knowledge of historical context, regional differences, and literary applications. Jamal wrote steadily, his characters flowing with confident precision. When Dr. Harrington collected the papers, her eyes narrowed slightly at the volume of his response. 3 days later, she slapped graded exams onto each desk. Jamal's heart sank when he saw the large red F on his paper, accompanied by a note, "See me after class." He scanned his responses, finding no major errors that would justify such a grade. The red marks seemed arbitrary, highlighting perfectly acceptable phrasings as awkward or incorrect. Tyler swiveled in his seat, flashing his A- with a smirk. When the bell rang, Jamal approached Dr. Harrington's desk, his back burning with both pain and indignation. "You wanted to see me?" he asked quietly. "Mr. Wilson," she said without looking up from her papers, "academic integrity is a cornerstone of Westfield's values." "I don't understand." "Your exam answers displayed vocabulary and cultural knowledge inconsistent with your background and previous performance. I can only conclude you received unauthorized assistance." The accusation hit like a physical blow. "I didn't cheat, Dr. Harrington." "Then explain how you included references to regional Beijing idioms and Tang Dynasty poetry that weren't covered in our curriculum," she challenged. "I've studied independently." "Mr. Zhang, my neighbor." "Convenient," she interrupted. "Look, Mr. Wilson, I understand the pressure scholarship students face to succeed, but..." Before she could finish, Jamal's phone rang in his pocket, a traditional Chinese melody he'd set for Mr. Chen's calls. Dr. Harrington's eyes flashed with irritation. "Phones should be silenced during school hours. Another rule you've chosen to ignore." The ringtone continued, filling the classroom with the delicate notes of a traditional Chinese folk melody. Several students still lingering after class turned to stare. Dr. Harrington extended her hand. "Give me the phone, Mr. Wilson. It will be returned to you after detention." Something shifted in Jamal at that moment, a quiet resolve crystallizing through the accumulated weight of weeks of dismissal and pain. Instead of handing over his phone or silencing it, he answered the call. "Wei, Chen Xiancheng," he said, his Mandarin flowing with natural confidence. "Duobuki, was xianzai zai xuexiao. Nin henmang ma." "Hello, Mr. Chen. I'm sorry, I'm at school right now. Are you busy?" Dr. Harrington's mouth fell open as Jamal continued speaking. His Mandarin wasn't just passable, it was elegant, nuanced, employing complex grammatical structures and cultural references that even she recognized as sophisticated. "Shi de, wo mingtian kei bangmang fani nei zhuanjian." "Mei Wenti," Jamal continued, his tone respectful but confident. "Yes, I can help translate that document tomorrow." "No problem." The classroom had fallen completely silent. Tyler's smug expression had morphed into shock. Zoe was grinning from ear to ear. "Xie nin de lijie. Wahue zai zinkisi ge nin faime." "Zaijian," Jamal concluded, ending the call. "Thank you for your understanding. I'll send it to you on Thursday. Goodbye." Dr. Harrington's face had drained of color, her pearl necklace rising and falling with rapid breaths. For several seconds, nobody moved as the implications of what they'd witnessed settled over the room. "Who was that?" Dr. Harrington finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mr. Chen," Jamal replied calmly, switching back to English. "He's the Cultural Affairs Director at the Chinese Consulate. I help him with some translation work occasionally." A student in the back whispered, "Holy shit," just loud enough to be heard. Dr. Harrington's shock quickly hardened into something else, a defensive anger that Jamal recognized all too well. The same expression Ms. Thompson had worn right before striking him with the ruler. "This changes nothing about the exam situation," she said, voice brittle. "Informal conversation is entirely different from academic proficiency. And answering a phone call in my classroom is still grounds for disciplinary action." "With respect, Dr. Harrington," Jamal replied, his voice steady despite his racing heart, "I believe this demonstrates that I didn't cheat on the exam. I have the knowledge and fluency to have written those answers myself." Principal's office. "Now," she snapped, pointing toward the door. "We'll let administration determine appropriate consequences for both the cheating and your disruptive behavior." As Jamal gathered his things, Zoe stepped forward. "Dr. Harrington, I've heard Jamal speaking Mandarin before. He's really fluent. I don't think he cheated." "This doesn't concern you, Miss Kim," Dr. Harrington said coldly. Jamal touched Zoe's arm gently. "It's okay. Thanks." As he walked toward the door, back straight despite the pain, he heard Tyler mutter, "Damn. Where'd he learn to speak like that?" Outside in the hallway, Jamal checked his phone. Mr. Chen had texted after the call, "Jamal, sorry to disturb you at school. Need help with diplomatic reception documents. Also, Ambassador Wang asked specifically for you to attend next month's cultural exchange. Let me know if your schedule permits. LC." Despite everything, Jamal smiled. Tomorrow would bring consequences, but for one brief moment, he had reclaimed his voice. Principal Montgomery's office was intimidating in its understated elegance. Leather-bound books lined mahogany shelves, and framed diplomas from Harvard and Yale hung behind a massive oak desk. "Mr. Wilson," Principal Montgomery said, reviewing the referral form, "Dr. Harrington says you disrupted class by answering your phone and displaying disrespectful behavior when confronted about academic dishonesty." Jamal sat straight despite his protesting back. "I answered a call from Mr. Chen at the Chinese consulate. I didn't plan it, but when Dr. Harrington accused me of cheating because my Mandarin was too good, it seemed like the perfect opportunity to demonstrate my fluency." The principal's eyebrows rose slightly. "You speak Mandarin well enough to converse with consulate officials?" "Yes, sir. I've been studying independently for years and sometimes help with translations." Principal Montgomery leaned back, studying Jamal with new interest. "Dr. Harrington is one of our most experienced educators. She's taught the children of diplomats and international business leaders." "I understand, sir. But she decided I couldn't possibly know what I know before giving me a chance to prove myself. She's been systematically excluding me from classroom participation since day one." A knock interrupted them. Zoe stood in the doorway, shifting nervously. "Miss Kim. This is a private meeting," Principal Montgomery said. "I know, sir, but this is important." Zoe stepped forward. "Jamal isn't lying. Dr. Harrington has been treating him unfairly since he arrived. Today wasn't an isolated incident. You're interrupting a disciplinary meeting, Miss Kim. With respect, sir, someone should interrupt when an injustice is happening." Zoe's voice trembled slightly but remained firm. Half the class saw Dr. Harrington's reaction when Jamal spoke perfect Mandarin. She was shocked, then angry, not because he answered his phone, but because he proved her wrong. Principal Montgomery sighed. "Thank you for your input, Miss Kim. Please return to class." After Zoe left, he turned back to Jamal. "I'll speak with Dr. Harrington. In the meantime, report to study hall instead of her class tomorrow. And next time, keep your phone on silent." "Yes, sir," Jamal replied, understanding he'd neither won nor lost. "May I ask something? Does Westfield have any resources for students with medical needs? My back injury makes sitting in those wooden chairs for 90 minutes extremely painful. See the school nurse. She'll provide the proper forms." Principal Montgomery's tone softened slightly. "Westfield can be challenging for new students, especially those from different backgrounds. But we do have resources to help those who truly belong here succeed." Jamal nodded, recognizing the olive branch for what it was, conditional acceptance, provided he proved himself worthy. That evening, Jamal was helping his mother fold laundry when his phone rang again. "That Chinese melody is so pretty," Mrs. Wilson commented as he answered. "Wei, Chen Xianchen," Jamal greeted, then listened intently. His expression grew increasingly surprised. When he hung up, Mrs. Wilson raised an eyebrow. "Everything okay?" "Dr. Harrington wants to see me tomorrow morning before class," Jamal explained. "Mr. Chen just called because she contacted him to verify my connection to the consulate." "The teacher who's been giving you trouble?" Mrs. Wilson's face darkened. "I don't like this, Jamal. First that woman at your old school and now this one. Maybe I should come with you." "Mom, you have the early shift tomorrow. I can handle this." Mrs. Wilson sat beside him, taking his hands in hers. At 42, she looked older. Years of double shifts had etched permanent fatigue into her face. But her eyes remained fierce, protective. "You know why I named you Jamal? It means beauty in Arabic. Your father said you were the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen." Her voice softened at the rare mention of the man who died before Jamal's second birthday. But beautiful things often get damaged in this world, especially when they're not what people expect them to be. "I'm okay, Mom." "No, you're not. Your back is hurting again, I see how you're sitting." She sighed. "I should have pushed harder for justice after that teacher hurt you. We needed the insurance from your job more than we needed a lawsuit we couldn't afford," Jamal reminded her gently. His phone chimed with a text. Zoe had messaged, "Tyler's telling everyone about what happened. The whole school's talking about it. You're basically a legend now." "Is that your girlfriend?" Mrs. Wilson teased, noticing his smile. "Just a friend from school." His phone rang again, Mr. Chen calling back. "Excuse me, I need to take this." This conversation lasted longer, with Jamal taking notes. When he finished, he looked stunned. "Mr. Chen is coming to school tomorrow," he told his mother. "He says he wants to meet Dr. Harrington." "Why would he do that?" Jamal explained how he'd been helping Mr. Chen with translations for nearly a year. "Remember when Mr. Zhang moved to the retirement community? He introduced me to Mr. Chen, who needed someone who could translate nuanced cultural documents while understanding both American and Chinese contexts." "And you never thought to mention you were working for a Chinese diplomat?" Mrs. Wilson asked incredulously. "It wasn't a big deal, just occasional help with cultural exchange materials. But apparently, Mr. Chen spoke highly of me to Ambassador Wang." Jamal shook his head in disbelief. "The document I've been helping with is for a major educational initiative they're launching. When Dr. Harrington called questioning my abilities, Mr. Chen decided to come see for himself what was happening." Mrs. Wilson looked thoughtful. "Maybe I should take off work after all." "No, Mom. We need the money, and I need to handle this myself." That night, Jamal barely slept. He reviewed the painful history that had led to this moment, Miss Thompson's ruler striking his back when he corrected her French, the weeks of pain without proper medical care because they couldn't afford the specialist, and now Dr. Harrington's systematic dismissal of his abilities. Tomorrow would either end like all the other times, with him being labeled the problem, or something would finally change. Jamal arrived at school 45 minutes early, finding Dr. Harrington already in her classroom. She looked tired, her usually immaculate appearance slightly disheveled. "Mr. Wilson," she said stiffly. "Sit down." He chose a seat carefully, positioning himself to minimize pressure on his back. "I spoke with Mr. Chen yesterday," she began, her voice carefully neutral. "He confirmed your association with the consulate, which was unexpected." Jamal waited, sensing there was more. "What I don't understand," she continued, "is how a student from your background acquired such proficiency without formal training. It defies educational norms. Not everything valuable comes from formal education, Dr. Harrington." She frowned. "Explain, then. How did this happen?" Jamal hesitated, then decided to share the full story. "When I was 12, our neighbor, Mr. Zhang, was losing his eyesight. He missed reading letters from his family in China, so I started learning Mandarin to help him. He'd lived in Beijing before the Cultural Revolution and taught at a university there. Mr. Zhang taught you? Dr. Harrington looked skeptical. He guided me, but I taught myself using library books, online resources, and practice. Mr. Zhang would correct my pronunciation and explain cultural contexts. When his grandchildren sent videos, we'd watch together, and he'd explain idioms and historical references. Jamal shifted in his seat, wincing slightly. When Mr. Zhang's eyesight deteriorated completely, I became his reader and writer. His family was grateful, and when they visited, they'd speak Mandarin with me. When he moved to a retirement community last year, he introduced me to Mr. Chen, who needed someone who understood both cultures. Dr. Harrington's expression remained guarded, but something had softened in her eyes. And the other languages? Spanish from working at my uncle's restaurant where most of the staff are from Mexico and Guatemala. French started as a school requirement, but I continued independently. Korean from online exchanges with students in Seoul. That's remarkable dedication, she admitted reluctantly. Dr. Harrington, may I ask why it's so hard to believe I could learn these languages? The question hung in the air between them. Before she could answer, her classroom door opened, and Principal Montgomery entered, accompanied by a distinguished Chinese man in an impeccable suit. Dr. Harrington, this is Mr. Li Chen from the Chinese consulate, Principal Montgomery announced, his tone conveying the visit's importance. He specifically requested to meet with you and Mr. Wilson this morning. Mr. Chen smiled warmly when he saw Jamal. Ah, Jamal.很高兴见面. Very happy to see you. 我也很高兴见到您, Jamal replied, standing respectfully. I'm also very happy to see you. Dr. Harrington looked between them, witnessing their easy rapport. Dr. Harrington, Mr. Chen said, turning to her with perfect, accented English, I understand there was some confusion regarding Jamal's linguistic abilities. There was an academic integrity concern that's being resolved, she replied carefully. I see. Perhaps I can provide some context. Mr. Chen placed a leather portfolio on her desk. Jamal has been assisting our Cultural Affairs Office with translation work that requires not just language proficiency but cultural sensitivity. His work has been exceptional, so much so that Ambassador Wang has personally requested his assistance with our upcoming educational exchange program. Principal Montgomery looked stunned. Is this true, Mr. Wilson? Yes, sir. Though I didn't realize the ambassador was involved. Indeed, confirmed Mr. Chen. In fact, after your call yesterday, Dr. Harrington, the ambassador suggested accelerating our plans. We would like Jamal to join our youth diplomat program this summer. As Mr. Chen continued explaining the prestigious opportunity, Jamal noticed Dr. Harrington's face cycling through emotions, shock, disbelief, and something that might have been shame. The atmosphere in Dr. Harrington's classroom had transformed with Mr. Chen's arrival. Principal Montgomery stood straighter, clearly recognizing the diplomatic implications of the situation. Dr. Harrington maintained her composure, but the tight grip of her hands on her desk betrayed her tension. Mr. Chen, she said with forced professionalism, while Jamal's connection to the consulate is certainly impressive, it doesn't entirely address the academic concerns regarding his exam. Mr. Chen raised an eyebrow. Perhaps I'm misunderstanding. Are you suggesting that Jamal lacks the linguistic proficiency that I personally have witnessed? Academic assessment requires standardized measurement, Dr. Harrington countered. Informal conversation doesn't necessarily translate to mastery of complex cultural and historical concepts. Principal Montgomery cleared his throat. Dr. Harrington, given Mr. Chen's testimony, with respect, she interrupted, diplomatic courtesy shouldn't override academic standards. An uncomfortable silence fell until Jamal spoke quietly. Dr. Harrington, may I ask what happened after you called Mr. Chen yesterday? She stiffened. That's not relevant. Actually, Mr. Chen interjected smoothly, I believe it is. After our call, I had Ambassador Wang's secretary forward Dr. Harrington samples of Jamal's translation work, including academic papers on Tang Dynasty poetry, the very subject she questioned his knowledge of. Principal Montgomery looked sharply at Dr. Harrington. "Is this true?" "I received some documents," she admitted reluctantly. "I haven't had time to review them thoroughly." "Then perhaps this will help expedite matters," Mr. Chen said, opening his portfolio and extracting several papers. "These are Jamal's original translations of 8th century poetry, with footnotes explaining historical and cultural contexts. Ambassador Wang was particularly impressed with his analysis of Li Bai's work." Dr. Harrington accepted the papers with visibly trembling hands. As she scanned the pages, her expression shifted from skepticism to disbelief. "This level of analysis," she began, then stopped. "Is exceptional," Mr. Chen finished for her. "Yes. Which is why the ambassador personally requested Jamal for our program." Principal Montgomery, sensing a diplomatic opportunity, smiled broadly. "Westfield Academy is tremendously proud of Jamal's accomplishments. We've always encouraged exceptional students to pursue their passions beyond traditional boundaries." The irony wasn't lost on Jamal, who shifted uncomfortably, triggering another spasm in his back. He couldn't suppress a wince. "Are you unwell?" Mr. Chen asked, noticing his discomfort. "It's an old injury," Jamal explained. "The chairs aggravate it sometimes." Principal Montgomery frowned. "You mentioned this yesterday. Have you seen the nurse yet?" "No, sir. I was planning to go after this meeting." Dr. Harrington looked up from the papers. "What sort of injury?" Jamal hesitated, reluctant to delve into that painful history, but Mr. Chen had noticed his hesitation. "Jamal," he said gently, "if there's a medical concern, perhaps it should be addressed before we proceed with other matters." After a moment's consideration, Jamal decided the truth was necessary. "Last year, a teacher at my previous school struck me across the lower back with a wooden ruler when I corrected her French pronunciation during class. The injury wasn't properly treated because we couldn't afford the specialist care." The room fell silent. Principal Montgomery looked appalled, while Mr. Chen's expression darkened considerably. "A teacher struck you?" Dr. Harrington asked, her voice barely audible. "Yes. The school classified it as an accidental contact to protect her. She claimed I was being disruptive." Jamal met Dr. Harrington's eyes directly. "That's why I never pushed back when you ignored me in class. I've seen what happens when students like me challenge teachers who don't believe we belong." The school nurse confirmed what Jamal had known for months: his back injury required proper medical attention. By afternoon, Principal Montgomery had arranged for him to see an orthopedic specialist, with the school covering all costs through their emergency medical fund. "This should have been addressed immediately," the nurse scolded, applying a heat pack to Jamal's inflamed muscles. "Sitting in those antique chairs must have been excruciating." "I managed," Jamal replied simply. When he returned to class the following day with a doctor's note requiring cushioned seating and periodic standing breaks, the changes were immediate and dramatic. A special ergonomic chair had been placed at his desk, and Dr. Harrington acknowledged him with a nod when he raised his hand. After class, she asked him to stay behind. "Mr. Wilson, Jamal," she began, her voice different from any tone he'd heard from her before. "I owe you an apology." He waited, surprised by the directness. "I made assumptions about your abilities based on preconceptions that were unfair and unprofessional." She met his eyes directly. "Your work is exceptional. The exam I failed you on was actually one of the best I've seen in 20 years of teaching." "Thank you for acknowledging that," Jamal said quietly. "I've spoken with Principal Montgomery," she continued. "Your grade has been corrected, and I've recommended you for advanced placement credit. Additionally," she hesitated, "I've initiated a review of our admissions and assessment procedures to address potential biases." Before Jamal could respond, Ms. Rivera appeared at the classroom door. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, though her expression suggested she wasn't sorry at all. "Jamal, you're needed in the auditorium." "Something about a consulate presentation?" Dr. Harrington nodded. "Go ahead." We'll continue this conversation later. In the auditorium, Jamal was stunned to find Mr. Chen addressing an assembly of Westfield students and faculty about the upcoming Chinese cultural exchange program. When he spotted Jamal, he smiled and gestured him forward. And here is the young man who has impressed Ambassador Wang with his exceptional linguistic and cultural understanding, Mr. Chen announced. Jamal Wilson will be our student liaison for this historic educational partnership between Westfield Academy and Beijing International School. The applause that followed was surreal to Jamal, who just weeks earlier had been systematically ignored in class. As he joined Mr. Chen on stage, he spotted his mother in the back of the auditorium, still in her hospital scrubs, tears streaming down her face as she applauded. Later, as students and faculty mingled at the reception, Tyler approached awkwardly. "So, that's pretty cool about the ambassador thing," he said, shuffling his feet. "How long did it take you to get that good at Mandarin?" "Years of consistent practice," Jamal replied honestly. Tyler nodded. "Think you could, maybe help me with my pronunciation sometime? Dr. Harrington says my tones are still off." Jamal smiled. "Sure. I'm starting a language exchange group on Thursdays. You're welcome to join." 3 months later, Jamal stood at the podium in Westfield Spring Assembly, addressing the school in both English and Mandarin. The specialized treatment for his back had finally resolved the chronic pain, allowing him to stand tall without discomfort. "Language connects us across cultural divides," he told the assembled students and faculty. "But true understanding requires us to look beyond our assumptions about who can speak, who deserves to be heard, and whose knowledge is valid." In the front row, Dr. Harrington nodded slightly. Their relationship had evolved into something neither could have predicted, not friendship exactly, but mutual respect. After her public apology, she had become one of the strongest advocates for Westfield's new inclusivity initiatives. The Youth Diplomat program with the Chinese consulate had expanded to include a scholarship fund for linguistically gifted students from underserved communities. Jamal's mother had been invited to serve on the selection committee, bringing her practical perspective on the barriers facing talented students with limited resources. "Language gave me a voice when I felt invisible," Jamal continued. "Now, I want to help others find theirs." After the assembly, Principal Montgomery approached with a document bearing the school seal. "The board unanimously approved the new anti-discrimination policy," he said, handing the paper to Jamal. "Including the provision requiring investigation of all injury incidents, regardless of whether they're classified as accidental." Jamal nodded, thinking of future students who wouldn't have to suffer in silence as he had. Outside, Ms. Rivera was coordinating the expanded multilingual literature club that now included 27 students speaking 14 different languages. "There's our founding inspiration," she called as Jamal approached. "We're debating the merits of various translations of 100 Years of Solitude. Care to weigh in?" Zoe waved him over, now comfortable speaking Korean with him during their regular language exchanges. Tyler was there too, his Mandarin pronunciation markedly improved, along with his attitude. As the group discussed literary nuances across languages, Jamal felt the weight of the past year settling into perspective. The pain, both physical and emotional, had been real. But so was this moment, being recognized not for conforming to others' expectations, but for the knowledge he had built himself, one character, one word, one language at a time. Dr. Harrington passed by, pausing briefly to observe the vibrant discussion. When she caught Jamal's eye, she gave him a small, genuine smile, acknowledgement of how far they had both come. "Xie xie," she said simply. "Thank you." "Bukeki," he replied. "You're welcome." Some lessons, Jamal reflected, were harder to learn than others. But the most important ones transformed not just the student, but the teacher as well. Dear friend, this story reminds us that brilliance exists everywhere, often hidden in plain sight because of our preconceptions about what it should look like. Too many talented young people are dismissed, ignored, or even punished simply because they don't fit someone's image of what excellence should be. True education isn't about maintaining exclusive gates, it's about recognizing potential in all its diverse forms. When we limit opportunities based on background rather than ability, we don't just hurt individuals, we rob society of gifts we desperately need. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe to support more content that challenges prejudice and celebrates hidden talents. Together, we can create a world where every Jamal gets the chance to be seen for who they truly are.